Hey everyone, Mario again, coming at you with another episode of First Impressions, the video series where I discuss films, either ones that are new and still going through their theatrical run, or those that I have been meaning to watch. Today's one technically does not fall into that one, because it's not one that, I've been meaning to watch, as in, I heard about it and go, oh, I gotta go find that film. But it is one I've been meaning to watch in the sense that it is from a director who I very much admire, and who I've been meaning to go further into his filmography. It is a film from Alfred Hitchcock. And this is a film that I'm actually surprised in cinema as literature we didn't watch, which I'm glad that in this film class we did. It, of course, is his 1946 spy film noir, Notorious, starring Claude Cary Grant, and Ingrid Bergman, among others. It's a film he made for RKO Pictures. Now, before going any further, I'd like to apologize if you hear any noise in the background. That is my brother, his girlfriend, and her daughter playing in the other room, so just getting that through. Now, Notorious is considered by critics and scholars to mark a watershed for Hitchcock artistically, and it represents a heightened thematic maturity. As his biographer Donald Spoto wrote, Notorious is in fact Alfred Hitchcock's first attempt, at the age of 46, to bring his talents to the creation of a serious love story, and its story of two men in love with Ingrid Bergman could only have been made at this stage in his life. Now, by this he means that if Hitch had tried to make this film, let's say 10, 15 years earlier in his career, he would not have had the wherewithal to do it. He just would not have been able to do it technically. He would not have had the skill to pull it off. And we'd be looking at a film to be like, oh, there was so potential in this film, but the director just did not have the directing chops and talent to do it. Which with Hitch, that'd be something like, really? And of course, Hitchcock actually did remake one of his films, and he said that the original, it was The Man Who Knew Too Much. He said that the original was the work of a talented amateur, and I forget exactly how he described himself when it came to the remake, but I'll make the decision for that myself when I watch the original and then watch the remake. As far as I know, I think that's the only instance where somebody remade their own film as a director. I know there's other ones who've done it as a producer, whether as in name only or actually producing it, but it's there. Of course, this film is known for a few shots, like the tracking shot he did to Ingrid Bergman's hand where she's holding a key, and then the famous 3-second long kiss that goes on for 2.5 minutes in order to get past the production code's ban. This is one of the things I find odd about the golden age of cinema, is all these weird rules the production code had. It's like, can't have a kiss longer than 3 seconds. Oh, get a grip. Now, the plot of the film involves a character named Alicia Huberman, who is the daughter of a convicted Nazi spy. At the beginning of the film, her father's trial has just concluded, and, she doesn't want to deal with the whole media circus that her father's trial has brought about. So she's thinking of relaxing at home, trying to get away from it all. Where she is recruited by a government agent named T.R. Delvin, who's Cary Grant's character, to infiltrate an organization of Nazis who have moved to Brazil after World War II. Which, on a side note, the film never actually uses the word Nazi that I picked up. It just very, very cleverly hints it. I mean, because the bad guys are Germans, it's after World War II, it's in Brazil. At one moment, I think the guy spotted the SSS on a wine bottle, so it's pretty clearly cut and dry that these are supposed to be the Nazis. I did not see that coming. At first, Alicia refuses to help the police, but Delvin manages to convince her with a recording. It's not a blackmail recording in the way that you would think. It's just, him playing on her patriotism. Which I thought was a clever scene. Now, they both go to Rio, and while awaiting the details of her assignment, the two fall in love. But the thing is, in this scene, we mainly see the attraction from Alicia's perspective, because Delvin, he's a very secretive man when it comes to his feelings. A guy I could sort of identify with, because I'm not really the most openly emotional person. I'm like a person who'd be like, yeah, you know it, but I'm not going to always outwardly say it. So in the end, when Delvin actually does say it, I kind of feel for him there, because he's been bottling this all up inside of him. He's been wanting to say it, but couldn't for the job, or couldn't because he doesn't want to betray himself or betray, show it outwardly, because he's not really that type of person, but in the end he does. So I really felt that. And I think Hitchcock did a good job of setting up the shots and setting up the character. Anyway, I'm jumping ahead of myself. Now, her job is to infiltrate the home of this gentleman whose last name is Sebastian. That is Claude Rains' character. And she does so. I mean, they have to do a weird meeting for them at first, but since Sebastian is in love with her, or was in love with her at their last meeting, they intend to play on that. And it works. And of course, the further Alicia goes into this, the deeper she gets pulled into it. And eventually she has to marry Sebastian in order to let the ruse stay. And I do like how they hint that she slept with him before this. You can add Sebastian's name to my list of playmates. And of course, one little piece of drama for the relationship between Alicia and Delvin is that when Alicia tells her handlers that Sebastian has proposed marriage, Delvin is cold about it. But even that, just the way that Cary Grant plays a character, you can tell the wheels in his head are turning, like steal a line from Frozen: conceal, don't feel, conceal, don't feel, conceal, don't feel, conceal, don't feel. But even with that running through his head, you can tell, yep, he's feeling it. You can tell he's a little jealous. Now, as the film goes on, we find out just what exactly the Nazis are doing. And it involves, I believe it was uranium, if I remember right. Which, according to IMDb, because the film's plot involved that, apparently Hitch was followed or at least tracked by the FBI for a period of time, which it's like, really? I know this is right after World War II, but you really are going to track a movie director when he's doing a film that involves uranium ore in Nazis? Like Alfred Hitchcock's going to turn out to be a secret Nazi. Although, if you think about it, that would have been an interesting plot twist in real life. In other news, famed director Alfred Hitchcock was arrested today when it was found out that he was secretly a Nazi sleeper agent. I was framed. I can't do a good Hitchcock impression, but the moment he walked into jail, he'd be like, "Good evening." I know, I'm just playing a bit. It's just a weird thought. Would his wife also have been a Nazi secret agent, or would she not have known? I did not know I was married to a Nazi. Getting a little off track, and I'll get back on. Now, as the film goes, you can imagine how tense things are getting, especially when both Alicia and Delvin know about the uranium. There's a whole thing where they have to get a key in order to get into the wine cellar where the uranium is kept. And of course, Sebastian at one point notices that the key's missing, and then the next day he finds it back again, and you can tell from there he's like, "You bitch." He doesn't say that, but that's what you can imagine goes through his mind. And of course, Alicia is going to get it from there, and it goes to the climax where, the two finally admit, Delvin finally confesses, and it has probably one of the best in-shots in Hitchcock's films, or at least one of my favorite ones because of its context. Let's just say it involves Nazi murder. That's all I'm going to say. But as this part of the film was going in class, I'm thinking, oh, I know what's going to happen now. They're going to know that. And I was wondering if it was going to show more after this or cut away. But it's like, also, that's the ending. So, all right, Sebastian's fucked. And Claude Rains does an excellent job portraying the character of Sebastian throughout the entire film. But when he realizes what the whole game Alicia was playing is, just the way he sells it on his face shows why Claude Rains was an excellent actor. And then, of course, the ending when he realizes he's in big trouble. You can really realize it there, too. It's like, ooh, great, I'm in trouble. And, of course, Rains, Bergman, and Grant are the heart of the film. Mainly it's Grant and Bergman being it, but Rains does have a heart at one point, but his is more of a dark heart because he is one of the bad guys. I guess you could say he's the main antagonist of the film, since he's the one whose house they're infiltrating. But if anything, the Nazi group is the antagonist. He's just the antagonist personified. And of course, touching on the thing I mentioned earlier about Hitch's thematic maturity with this film. This is the earliest of the films of his I've seen, but since he made this one about 8 years before my favorite of his films, Rear Window, you can see where that maturity level that you see in Rear Window began and how he had mastered it a little bit more by the time he made Rear Window. But if you were to watch those two films back to back, you can definitely tell they were made by the same director, even if you did not know Hitch directed them. And while people will say that Rear Window was the beginning of his last great period, you could say Notorious might be, but you could say that Notorious is like the opening salvo, was like the wind up. This is the wind up, and Rear Window is the pitch, if that makes any sense to anyone. And of course, like many of Hitchcock's films, it has some motifs. Like, I think the most obvious one is the fact that our lead female is a blonde, because we all know good old Alfred loved his blondes. I mean, just think about it. Grace Kelly, among others. Tippi Hedren. You can go on and on about his love with his blondes and all that. There is the whole mother thing, which of course is most famous in Psycho. A boy's best friend is his mother. Of course, Alex has a close relationship with his mother in this film, but in the moment I saw the mother character, I'm like, yep, there's a Hitch motif. Let's see, blonde, check. Mother, check. Assumed identity, check. I can only think of a couple other ones where that pops up off the top of my head, and of course that would be North by Northwest, the whole Kaplan thing. And of course Marnie comes to mind. Marnie and her multiple identities. Psycho a little bit has that too. Of course, we don't know that till the end. I really wouldn't say that The Man Who Knew Too Much has it, but maybe you could argue a little bit. Haven't seen it, but maybe Rebecca if you push it. But I'd say this definitely is that. And of course, casting. Cary Grant especially. Bergman, I don't know offhand what other Hitchcock films she did, but it says on IMDb the casting there. But Cary Grant especially. I've already mentioned one of the other films he did with Hitch, and that of course is North by Northwest, which is definitely one of my favorite Hitchcock films and is the closest we'd ever get to him making a Bond film. I mean, they even did that joke in the movie Hitchcock. They're offering the Ian Fleming novel. Didn't they know I just made that film? It's called North by Northwest. And of course, definitely comes with my recommendation, this film. I'm going to end this by talking about a little bit of interesting trivia from IMDb. I already mentioned nothing about the kiss. The shot where Bergman is in the background and the coffee cup is in the foreground, and both are unfocused, it was achieved by using a giant coffee cup placed further away than it appears, so the good old forced perspective trick. I gotta remember that one in case I ever actually do get around to making a movie one day, so if I want to do a shot like that. Apparently, Hitchcock consulted Nobel Prize winner Robert Milcan on how to make an atomic bomb. He refused to answer, but he did confirm that uranium could fit in a wine bottle. Let's see, the balcony scene was largely improvised, and Hitch told them to just speak as lovers would. Claude Rains is only 4 years younger than his on-screen mother, Leopoldine Constantin. And apparently Rains also stood on a box for several of his scenes with Bergman, but not in the honeymoon return scene. I guess this is mainly for the whole thing with Grant and all that. I guess it's one of those weird things where they don't want to make the person seem too much shorter than their on-screen lover. You know, they've done this in other movies. They did it in Batman 89, and they did it in Empire Strikes Back. Here's an interesting change, which I think might have changed part of the film a little bit, but in the original script, Alicia was a prostitute. Adds a little bit more context to her conquest. The little running joke there, which that's another thing that this film does contain that a lot of Hitchcock's films contain, which is one of the reasons why I love his films, and that is their witty dialogue. Like, when it comes to like double entendre humor, it's classy and funny, and you get where he's going at without him having to be too explicit. And of course, this plays off the little thing I mentioned earlier about Hitch and his blondes. They managed to get along famously despite his infatuation with her. And he did tell an anecdote, apparently, that is obviously not true. If you just hear the story, that she refused to leave his bedroom one night until he made love to her, which of course we know that not happened, but apparently his obsession with the star was obvious enough to cause tension between him and his wife Alma, which Just based on Hitch's infatuation with a lot of his female stars, Alma is a saint for putting up with all that. And of course, they did bring that up in the movie Hitchcock. Your infatuation with your blondes. Which of course leads to one of my favorite lines in the film at the end. There will never be a Hitchcock blonde as beautiful as you. You do not know how many years I've waited for you to say that. And that, my dear, is why they called me the master of suspense. And apparently Cary Grant and Bergman found the famous kissing scene quite problematic because, as Hitchcock put it, the blocking for the scene was complicated and it needed to be remembered for several takes. Leopoldine's performance is her only American film role. And this is a funny little story. This answer is totally Hitch if you know any of his little quips. While filming one shot, Cary Grant carped that he was supposed to open the door with his right hand, but he was holding his hat in that hand. And Hitch's reply was, "Have you ever considered the possibility of transferring the hat to the other hand?" If you know Hitch's quips, you can see that is totally something he would say. I might say that too. It's like, you ever think of switching hat from one hand before opening? It's like his other quips. It's called acting. My dear, if you were doing anything I did not want, I would have to direct you. Anyway, that about concludes this. That's about all the interesting one. It definitely comes with my recommendation if you are a fan of Hitch's films. If you not really the biggest fan of black and white films, I'd say still try to give it a watch because it is an excellent film from a technical perspective and from a acting perspective. Definitely say I do want to give it another watch. I gotta go double check real quick something. Damn. Sadly, it is not in the box set I have, the Masterpiece Collection. The only film before Rear Window on here that I need to watch is Rope. Saboteur's not on here. Rebecca's not on here, which shocks me. The only films before Rear Window on here are Saboteur, Shadow of a Doubt, and Rope. Everything after that is post Rear Window. Trouble with Harry, The Man Who Knew Too Much, Vertigo, Psycho, The Birds, Marnie, Torn Curtain, Topaz, Frenzy, and Family Plot. So I'm going to have to get this film separate along with Rebecca if I end up liking it. But, to make my Alfred Hitchcock collection complete, it's worth it. The only thing that surprises me is that North by Northwest and The Man Who Knew Too Much aren't on here. But, alas, sometimes these things happen. Now, I don't know if I were to give it a rating, I'm not quite sure. I'm guessing at least a 4, maybe 4.5 out of 5. It's going to take a couple watches before that is fully set in stone, but that's my tentative rating. Like I said, if you're a fan of Hitchcock and you haven't seen it, watch it and you will have a good evening.